Be sure to like and subscribe to Starbound here on YouTube. It ain't much, but it's honest work. Ryther examined the lead thrower. It was a simple thing, primitive, a near solid mass of metal with a polymer grip. 6 chambers that contained cartridges packed with metal and a small explosive charge. It was barely better than just throwing rocks like a savage. It basically was just throwing rocks. And yet... Ryther sipped his drink as his cybernetics connected with station security. He eyed his target on the security feed. It was a human dressed all in black. He wore a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The hallway was crowded, but the crowd parted for the man like he was made of antimatter. Ryther didn't blame them. The man in the wide-brimmed hat was the single scariest thing he'd ever seen, and Ryther had seen a lot. He moved with lethal grace, and his eyes were as cold and dead as the void itself. Ryther had thought the lead dealer's legend was exaggerated. Now he wondered if they might be underselling the man. Ryther couldn't wait to kill him. Ryther was a Zitz, an insectile biped with 4 arms and a green exoskeleton. Most Zitz were slaves or refugees, but not Ryther. Ryther was a professional murderer, one of the best. Not that anyone would know it. No one had seen his true face. Ryther's image inducer saw to that. It changed his appearance, his voice, even his scent. Ryther was a ghost. His name was only spoken by the most exclusive clientele, and only in whispers. Ryther didn't know what the man in black had done to piss the syndicate off, but they wanted him dead, and they wanted it now. Ryther was only called in for the hardest of targets, Scarlac Queens and Grotto Nobles, people with unlimited resources and unbeatable security. A lone gun hand was beneath him, or would be if the target was anyone else. The lead dealer had no name, no background, no weakness. He was an unstoppable tide of death, hunting all who dared to harm his species. He traveled the frontier in a ghost ship, leaving nothing in his wake but thunder and blood. It was said he'd killed 2,000 men. That last part was an exaggeration. It had to be. 2,000 men in 3 years? Unlikely. The human had to know there was a price on his head. He didn't seem to care. He strolled casually down the hallway, leading a procession of Rondar laborers. Rondar were the same everywhere. Big, stupid, headless brutes. They had brown, leathery skin. A single large eye was centered in their chest above gaping, ugly mouths. They were pushing hover platforms loaded with cargo. Ryther sipped his drink as he watched the strike team approach. The syndicate wasn't the only group to post a bounty on the human. The lead dealer had started his career by murdering Brill Azure, the sole heir of House Azure of the Kingdom of Grotto. The bounty they'd posted was smaller than the syndicate's, but not by much. They'd also been sending strike teams after the man. Strike teams like the one Ryther had tipped off. This strike team consisted of 6 Grotto death dealers. The death dealers were the most lethal combatants known space had to offer. 3 meters tall, covered in blue chitin, and loaded with cybernetic enhancements. The armored plates that covered their bodies had been engraved and inlaid with obsidian sigils. They were experts in all forms of combat, and tough enough to ignore small arms fire. Even Ryther wouldn't dare face a strike team head-on. The strike team pushed through the crowd towards the lead dealer. The crowd tried to part for them, but the Grottos were in a hurry. Those unfortunates too slow to move aside were smashed out of the way. The lead dealer's eyes narrowed at the approach, but he didn't stop or slow down. When they were 10 meters from the human, the lead death dealer reached for his gun. It was a lead thrower, a bigger one than Ryther's, but the principle was the same. Human weapons weren't common yet, but they were getting more popular. They were primitive, but they were the only long-distance weapons that didn't have a power source. Security systems didn't register lead throwers as weapons. More importantly, nullifiers couldn't shut them down. Nullifiers were a nasty piece of Fed tech. The lead dealer was rumored to have one. A nullifier could shut down every gun in a 300-meter radius. Every gun except what it was programmed to exclude. The lead dealer didn't need to program exceptions. His weapons were too primitive to be shut down by a nullifier field. The death dealer bellowed as he drew his pistol.
"Lead dealer, House Azure sends its regard."
There was a crack of thunder. The lead grotto started to fall. More thunder followed. The other 5 death dealers were dead before the first one hit the ground. It was so fast Ryther had to replay the security feed in slow motion to understand it. The lead dealer had drawn, fired, and reholstered his pistol in a 1/10 of a second. The bullet had entered the lead grotto's mouth. It ricocheted off the back of the death dealer's skull and up into his brain. While that was happening, the human whipped out a shotgun and pressed the butt to his shoulder. He fired 5 rounds in 8/10 of a second. 5 armor-piercing sabot rounds splattered 5 grotto skulls. The whole exchange had taken a second and a half. 3 of the death dealers had managed to clear leather, but none of them had gotten off a shot. A second replay told Ryther the human had shot the faster grottos first. Ryther's antenna twitched. The man in black had killed 6 enhanced grotto in under 2 seconds. That should not be possible. Ryther forced his antenna to stillness, cursing his unprofessional display. He was in public, and no one should know what he was watching. His target was even more lethal than he'd expected. Attracting attention was a bad idea. The human's gaze flicked around, searching for more targets. Satisfied, he waved his cargo haulers forward. He stepped over the bodies of the strike team, reloading as he walked. His expression never changed. Ryther cut his connection to the security feed. He took a look around. The Cosmic Cantina was probably the nicest establishment he'd seen on the frontier. It was a bar, spacious and homey. The walls were lined with hive stone and the floor with aromatic lichen. Each table had its own light settings, and the chairs were fancy nanotech that conformed to the body. The bar was crowded, but only half the patrons had Federation Iden badges. The rest were outlaws, humans, or fellow Zitz. He flagged down the barmaid and ordered another drink. The barmaid was a Zitz like Ryther. Female. A cute little thing. She had a lavender exoskeleton and brilliant crimson eyes. Her wings fluttered flirtatiously, and her antenna had been modified to glow at the tips. Ryther could smell the female was mated to the barkeep. The barman had 8 different guns strapped to his person, along with 4 tungsten braking sticks. His antenna swiveled constantly as he scanned for threats. Ryther's cybernetics told him the barman had cybernetics. Military grade. A veteran, most likely. Dangerous, but nothing Ryther hadn't dealt with before. There were 3 people on stools in front of the bar, 2 Phylaxians and a human female. The Phylaxian men were short bipeds with long fur and 3 eyes. They were old. One of them had gray fur, but the other had dyed himself a horrible fluorescent orange.
"Let me get this straight,"
said the gray Phylaxian.
"You cut the tree off at the roots, but you put it in water to keep it alive?"
Yep. It was the human that spoke, Ryther's secondary target. The girl was about 17 years old, with long dark hair. She wore a long brown coat and a white hat. On her hip were a plasmacaster and 2 lead-thrower pistols. A bulge in her coat revealed the presence of another, larger weapon, most likely a shotgun.
"Then you put lights all over the tree,"
the Phylaxian continued.
"Little blinking lights that force photosynthesis and prevent it from going dormant?"
"The lights are just there to look pretty," said the female, "but yeah, basically." The female's name was Anita Williams. She dealt with clients on the lead dealer's behalf. The syndicate believed they were a mated pair, but Ryther knew better. He'd smelled her when she walked in. The girl was untouched. She moved like a dangerous person. It was a faint echo of the lead dealer's lethal grace, but it was there. Ryther figured she was an apprentice. Her bounty wasn't nearly as high as the lead dealer's, but it was still more than most lunkers would make in a lifetime.
Then you put presents under the tree,
the old man said.
But only after you've wrapped them in the remains of more dead trees.
Wrapping paper, Anita said. Yeah. The gray Phylaxian stared at her in horror.
Humans are monsters.
What? Anita frowned. It's just a tree, Drago.
It's a living thing, Anita.
The fluorescent orange Phylaxian cut in.
Plants don't talk, but they can smell and feel pain. You humans cut them up, keep them alive, and force them to stay awake for weeks smelling their dead kin. That's hardcore, Anita,
Drago pointed out.
I can't imagine what sins trees committed against your ancestors to deserve such a fate.
Come on, guys, Anita complained. Don't ruin Christmas trees for me. This is gonna be my first one. Ryther checked the security feeds again. The lead dealer was still a minute away from the docking bay that held his ship. One more minute. Then he'd be a pile of bloody chunks. Ryther regretted he wouldn't be able to watch the explosion. The camera for that particular bay door was down. Not his doing. He suspected the lead dealer had disabled it himself.
I thought the lead dealer dealt in lead,
Drago reminded the human.
How'd you get him to do a cargo run?
I told him I wanted a Christmas tree. Anita shrugged. He can be really sweet sometimes.
Sweet? Drago sputtered. The lead dealer?
Panic flashed across the girl's face. Don't tell him I said that, she frowned. Sweet's not the right word, anyway. He's not... She tilted her head, thinking. He's not affectionate. Doesn't say how he feels, but he pays attention, and he does things.
He does things?
The hideously orange Phylaxian waggled his eyebrows. Don't be gross, Hylar, the girl chided. He found out when my birthday is, and he surprised me with a cake. Gave me a machine gun as a present.
A machine gun?
The bartender spoke. His antenna twitched in mild amusement. That sounds like him. Yeah, Anita chuckled. I tried to be cool about it, but I think he noticed I wasn't excited. Then for Christmas, he got me stuffed animals, a whole passel of them.
Stuffed animals?
Hylar's face twisted.
Drago's right, you're all monsters.
They're not actual animals, Hylar, Anita explained, exasperated. They're just toys made to look like animals.
Toys?
Drago cocked two eyebrows.
Aren't you a little over toys, Anita?
Maybe, Anita admitted, but I loved them. I never had a teddy bear as a kid. I only ever mentioned it once, but he remembered. He does stuff like that. It's how I know he cares. Ryther readied himself. Any second now. The docking bay wasn't next to the cantina, but it was close enough he'd feel the explosion through the deck. The moment he did, he'd take his lead-thrower pistol and blow Anita's brains out. Then the barkeep. The two Phylaxians after. It would take 2 seconds. 3 at most. He could have killed them already. Ryther was still tempted. He could gun them down now and let the lead dealer come for him. It would be a mistake. Glorious showdowns were for amateurs. Ryther was far too professional to allow a fair fight, especially after seeing how easily the human had dealt with the Grotto. Better to kill him from a safe distance, preferably before the human knew Ryther was there.
You right, Anita,
Hylar grinned.
He is sweet.
Don't you dare, Anita hissed at him. You say a word about this and I'll shoot you. The lead dealer walked through the last section covered by the cameras. 10 seconds, maybe 20. Ryther gave no outward sign, but his cybernetics perked up. He calculated a firing solution.
So what are the other trees for?
Drago asked.
Are you giving the colonies Christmas trees too?
Sort of, said Anita. Some people in New Bounty want to plant a small grove, a little piece of earth on an alien world, you know? They got a sciencey guy that says the soil's good for it. And pine trees are useful for a whole lot of stuff besides Christmas. Ryther braced himself for the thump of explosives. He'd stopped fiddling with his little human pistol, but his fingers were in position to snatch it and fire.
That still don't explain why you came out here to meet the shipment, Hylar told her. You paid a lot of goodongs to get 'em this far. It wouldn't have cost much more to have them shipped all the way.
Maybe I just wanted to see you guys, Anita smiled at him, and eat more of Farlow's famous burritos. They're not famous yet, the barkeep admitted, but they should be.
You don't need a cargo run to do that,
Drago pointed out. True, Anita admitted. She sighed. We're going fishing.
Fishing?
Hylar asked.
Is that another barbaric human tradition?
A metaphor for one, said Anita. The explosion should have happened by now. Ryther checked the camera feeds near the lead dealer's docking bay. He could see the tail end of the Rondar cargo procession. They were shuffling around. We're trying to drum up some business, Anita continued. The bandits have been quiet all month. We can't find anyone to kill. It's making him surly.
So you got yourselves a cargo manifest, Drago guessed. A public delivery to make yourselves easy to find.
Basically. Anita might have said more, but a musical whistling noise came out of her pocket. Hold on a sec. She pulled a comm device out of her pocket and pressed a button. What's up, boss? The lead dealer's voice was as grim and cold as the rest of him.
Some jackass rigged the bay door with explosives. I'm gonna come have a burrito while security deals with it.
Ryther carefully kept his antenna from twitching. The human had found his bomb? How? How did he even know how to look? Security? Anita frowned. Do they know how to deal with something like that?
Not my problem, said the lead dealer. They'll figure it out, or they'll have to get a new door.
Anita shrugged. Okay, boss, I'll see you in a minute. Ryther should leave. Soon. He holstered his pistol. Where was the barmaid? He needed to pay his tab and get out. He saw her taking an order from a trio of Zist. He resisted the urge to wave impatiently at the woman. Then he registered what the girl had been saying. His antenna froze. The lead dealer wasn't here to pick up trees. He was hunting for people like Ryther. The cargo run wasn't an opportunity, it was a trap. Ryther's blood ran cold. Then his antenna twitched with excitement. This might be the most dangerous contract he'd ever taken. A challenge worthy of a Galaxy-class assassin. The human wanted to play? Ryther would play. The barmaid finally finished with the other Zist. She caught Ryther's wave and came over, promised to come back with the bill.
Are you gonna buy him a burrito?
Hylar asked Anita. He was grinning again.
You know, 'cause he's so sweet.
The girl's glare was cold as ice. Her hand dropped to her pistol. I really will shoot you.
No, you won't,
the fluorescent Phylaxian said smugly.
I'm too pretty to kill.
Anita gave up the glare in favor of a scowl. You're not too pretty to tattle on. I'll tell your wives about Loria. Hylar gasped.
You wouldn't.
Try me, Anita growled. The barmaid came back. Ryther paid. He checked the camera feeds. The bill had taken too much time. The lead dealer was almost here. He couldn't leave without brushing past the man. Rather forced himself to stay seated, sip a little more booze. Not too much. He wanted to finish the drink and leave a minute or so after the lead dealer arrived. Leaving too soon would risk attention. The lead dealer entered the cantina. He paused just inside the door, letting his eyes adjust. Ryther almost drew and fired, but decided the sudden motion would get him killed. He'd seen how quickly the human could move. The lead dealer had been scary on camera. He was much worse in person. 2 meters tall with thick bones and lean muscle and a jaw like a lantern. Dark eyes darted around the cantina, taking in everything. Ryther almost shivered when those cold eyes swept over him. The lead dealer started forward. He walked past Ryther's table close enough to touch. Humans were fragile things. Ryther could lift 2 tons. A punch from him would cave in the lead dealer's skull or knock his head clean off. The moment of shock that followed would be more than enough time to kill his allies. Ryther could end this right now. He would if he thought he'd survive the attempt. Ryther was fast, but he was also sitting. He would need to stand to reach the man's head, and any blow that didn't instantly kill the man would be the assassin's end. Not that Ryther thought the blow would land. The lead dealer was on alert. He'd fill Ryther full of holes before the punch made it halfway. The man in black tipped his hat at the barmaid. He scooted a stool to the corner of the bar near the wall, sitting with the rest of the cantina in view. Paranoid. Smart. Ryther took another swig. He'd wait a little longer, finish his bottle, and go. Explosives, huh? Asked Anita. I guess we caught something. The lead dealer grunted. Got a Grotto strike team. House Azure? Anita guessed. Don't they ever give up? The lead dealer grunted. The barkeep poured him a shot of whiskey. He downed it. Do you think they planted the bomb? Anita asked. No. The man in black asked the barkeep for a burrito and a beer. Then he turned back to the girl. Grotto come at you head on. This was someone else. Would it be suspicious to leave now? Would it be more suspicious to stay? Ryther finished his drink. He was afraid. Fascinating. Ryther was no stranger to fear. Violence was a fearful profession. It had been a long time since he'd been as afraid as he was now. Even longer since he'd been afraid of just one man. He was really going to enjoy this. Ryther stood. The dead dealer's eyes flicked to him. Ryther caught the look and flicked his antenna in the opposite direction. The Zit's equivalent of looking quickly away from danger. Something the average Zit's lunker would do. Ryther shuffled away. Just another Zit's heading home after a drink. He maintained his mundane plod until he was well away from the cantina. Ryther made straight for the nearest restroom. He doubted the humans were tapped into the station's security feeds, but he didn't become one of the galaxy's highest paid assassins by taking stupid chances. He tapped into the cameras and watched himself open the restroom door. The moment line of sight was blocked, his cybernetics sent a command to his image inducer, stealth mode. Ryther disappeared. The inducer was bending the light around him. It was masking his scent and muffling his sound. Ryther darted out of the restroom before the door closed. The cameras registered a faint ripple in the air. Ryther forced himself to slow down. Ryther switched to one of the cameras in the cantina. The lead dealer and the girl were talking with the barkeep. The bar cameras didn't have audio, but it didn't matter. They were still in the bar and still in range of Ryther's surprise. He left a little present attached to the underside of his table. The present was small, about the size of a bullet. It contained a highly pressurized nerve gas. The gas would kill all known sapient species on contact. Ryther could trigger its release with his cybernetics, but he needed more distance first. He didn't want the embarrassment of being killed by his own gas. Since he needed distance anyway, Ryther decided to make the most of it. His gas capsule was designed for a smaller space than the cantina, but there was a small chance the targets could escape before the nerve gas filled the room. Ryther needed a vantage point from which he could pick off survivors. The corridor that housed the Cosmic Cantina was one of the main thoroughfares of Kental Station. It was 8 meters wide and the ceiling was 8 meters high. It stretched for nearly a kilometer in either direction. Crowds and cargo wove their way through the space. Beings of all descriptions visited shops and restaurants, or were simply heading to and from the docks. There were no balconies or high windows in sight, but Ryther didn't need one. Ryther leapt. Magnetic mesh in his feet and the tips of his fingers activated. The mesh let him cling to the wall just below the corridor ceiling. Ryther spared a moment to check if anyone had seen him. The inducer couldn't keep up with sudden movements. His outline would have been noticeable if anyone had been looking. No one had. Good. Ryther crawled along the wall. He took his time. Every few seconds he checked the cantina's cameras. The lead dealer had sat down. The girl sat next to him, fiddling with a comm device. The bartender was cooking something. Ryther kept going until he was half a kilometer away from the cantina. This would be far enough. The human's nullifier would keep him from firing a gun within 300 meters of the man, but it wouldn't do scat to stop a gun from farther away. Ryther transitioned from the wall to the ceiling. He pulled out his favorite gun. It was an XSV-37 shortwave radiation sniper beam, the absolute pinnacle of silent, long-distance murder. The weapon was functionally a laser, but instead of light, it used microwaves. The microwave radiation would excite the water molecules in whatever they hit. One pulse from the XSV-37 would flash boil the lead dealer's brain with enough force to burst his skull. The microwaves were soundless and invisible. They wouldn't give away Ryther's position. Ryther was ready. He tapped back into the cantina's cameras. The lead dealer was eating a burrito. The girl was still on her comm. The barkeep was pouring drinks for the cute barmaid to take. Ryther triggered the gas capsule. The capsule would make a loud popping noise when it ruptured. Ryther couldn't hear it, but the lead dealer's head jerked up. So did the barkeep's. The girl ignored the noise, still playing with her comm pad. Ryther's antenna wriggled in anticipation. Then they tilted in confusion. No one was dead. The nerve gas should kill instantly. There should be a flood of lunkers keeling over, the lead dealer included. Did the activation fail? Had he been given a faulty gas capsule? Anita looked up at the camera. She smirked, then pointed at a bottle on the bar. She tipped her hat like she knew Ryther was watching. A chill swept through him. Had his connection been compromised? It shouldn't be possible. Ryther had the most advanced electronic warfare programs known to sapiens. He should be untraceable. The Zitz watched in confusion a moment longer, then had his cybernetics split the feed. He kept one eye on what was happening now and had the other review footage of what had happened when he left the cantina. The news was not good. 10 seconds after Ryther had walked out of the cantina, the lead dealer had stood. He'd strode over to Ryther's table, looked under it, and found the gas capsule. Without a moment's hesitation, the crazy human had plucked it from its position. He'd calmly walked back to the bar and dropped the thing into a half-empty bottle of whiskey. He'd screwed the lid back on and went back to look over Ryther's chair and the other nearby furniture. Then he moseyed back to the bar to ask for a burrito. The lead dealer had a reputation for extreme violence, but the rumors never said anything about intelligence. The man was good. He'd seen through 2 of Ryther's attempts on his life. It was disconcerting, but not a deal-breaker. Ryther had been stymied before. Not often, but it happened. That was why he always set up multiple ways to kill a target. The human and his allies had only seen his fake face. They didn't know who he was or what he could do. They wouldn't guess he was half a kilometer away with an XSV-37. All he had to do was wait. Ryther waited. It was a hard thing, staying motionless for hours, but the Zitz was a professional. He didn't move, he just watched. The 2 humans stayed at the bar, conversing with the barkeep and the 2 Phylaxians. For 3 hours they sat there. Eventually the lead dealer pulled a comm device out of his pocket and answered it. He hung up and said something to Anita. They followed the barkeep through the door behind the bar. They didn't come out. Ryther waited. They still didn't come out. Ryther cursed himself. The station schematics hadn't shown it, but there must be a back way out of the bar. The targets were gone. Ryther switched his view to the cameras next to the lead dealer's docking bay. He saw Rondar leaving with empty cargo platforms. Ryther holstered his sniper beam. Screw this. He didn't have to play the lead dealer's game. He would go back to his vessel. He'd already learned what ship the human used. It was fast and heavily armed, but Ryther's was better. He would wait for the human to leave the station. He would follow and blast the son of a grotch out of the sky. It took half an hour of crawling invisibly along the walls before he found an empty corridor. He dropped down and gave himself a new face. Then he changed his mind and had the image inducer make him look like a new species. He was a gizmodo now, A 2-meter-tall bipedal mech suit with 2 arms, controlled by a small furry creature peeking out of the hole in his chest plate. Using the Gizmodo image meant he had to keep his lower arms wrapped around himself, but mild discomfort was a small price to pay. Comfortably anonymous, Ryther made his way back to the docking bays. He punched in the access code for his bay door. The door hissed open. The lead dealer was standing behind it. Ryther froze. The human's eyes bored into him. His long leather jacket was peeled back, revealing a pair of lead-thrower revolvers. For a long moment, the lead dealer just stared. Then, in a voice colder than the grave, he asked, "Where's your partner?" "Partner?" asked Ryther. He didn't have a partner. Why would... Oh, of course. The lead dealer was looking for a Zist. Ryther looked like a Gizmodo. He kept his voice confused. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do." The lead dealer was certain. "There's only 4 ships on this station with Zit's pilots. I know the other 3. Where is he?" "I don't have a Zit's pilot," Ryther said in a fearful voice. He didn't have to fake it. The human was terrifying. There has to be some mistake. As he spoke, one of Ryther's lower hands grasped the handle of his lead thrower. His other lower hand grabbed a braking stick. He did it slow, so the image inducer wouldn't give him away. "There isn't," the lead dealer said firmly. "I'm going to ask you one more time, all polite-like. Then things are going to get..." Ryther drew and fired. His other hand whipped out his braking stick and flung it. At least, that was the idea. There was a crack of thunder. Ryther's shot missed the human. His braking stick clattered to the deck, just barely missing the man's foot. His pistol hit the ground half a heartbeat later. "Ugly," the lead dealer finished. Ryther looked down at his hands. He couldn't see them. Right, the inducer. Ryther turned it off. He'd been shot. Twice. His right hand was a pulped mess. His left wrist had a hole through it. "What?" he gurgled. Gurgled? Oh. Ryther hadn't been shot twice. He'd been shot 3 times. Both hands and the space the image inducer had shown as the face of a Gizmodo. That space happened to be the lower center of Ryther's chest. Scat. Ryther's legs gave out. He found himself sitting, staring down at the green blood leaking out of his thorax. He looked up at the lead dealer. "Ow!" He wanted to elaborate, but all he got out was another gurgle and some blood. The human regarded him for a moment. He seemed to understand what Ryther was asking. He spoke. "That pea shooter." He indicated Ryther's lead thrower with the hand that wasn't holding a gun. "It's a snub-nosed 38. Saturday night special. The syndicate's the only ones that can buy them. Some kind of deal with the black market." The lead thrower? Ryther had asked for one when he learned who the target was. He hadn't known they were exclusive. He tried to curse. Instead, he started coughing. "I guess you didn't lie," said the human. "You don't have a partner." He grimaced. "Farlow didn't appreciate you trying to poison his bar, by the way." Ryther considered one last attempt. His other guns were useless against a man with a nullifier, but he could try throwing another braking stick. His braking sticks were pure tungsten and weighed 300 kilograms apiece. If he could just hit the man with one. No, Ryther decided, it was no use. He was dying. Even if he had the strength to hurl a braking stick, the lead dealer was too quick. He'd shoot Ryther's arms to pieces. "Eat dirt, human," he wheezed. "It was a nice piece of tech," the lead dealer continued. His gaze flicked to Ryther's guns. The assassin's weapons were among the most advanced and versatile ordnance known to sapiens. Not that they'd done him any good. "You got some real fancy toys." The human's eyes glittered. "But that's all they are. Toys." Ryther tried to curse the man again. He coughed up more blood. An idea sparked one last hope. Ryther was a dead man. He couldn't change that, but that didn't mean he had to die alone. He fumbled at his belt pouch. He had 2 more gas capsules. If he could crush one, he was too slow. The lead dealer leveled his pistol towards his head and said, "Let me show you what a real gun can do." There was a crack of thunder, then nothing.